Good afternoon and welcome back to Making Sense of Diversity. I am your host, Larry Jefferson, and my partner,
Dantrell Smith.
And today we have the pleasure of having a special guest in today, Mr. Doug Peak from the Southeast Campus. And we're going to let Doug introduce himself.
Well, you kind of gave it away, Larry.
No, right?
Yes. My name is Doug Peak. It is a caveman name, I realize that. But for Southeast Campus, Director of Student Development Services, been there in this position since 2004. And really enjoy the work I get to do there.
So before we dive into this week's podcast, I wanted to give you a little recap of last week. We talked about multiculturalism, but we brought in Dr. Ume, who gave us the Asian perspective of multiculturalism. And if you did not have an opportunity, please go back and listen to it because it was phenomenal. Just the insight and the things that he shared, particularly with his experience coming over to America.
Yeah, I definitely learned a lot.
Yeah, I mean, even with the whole healthcare deal, like
right.
It was phenomenal. So definitely make an opportunity to go back and listen to that podcast.
Yeah, especially the adaptation part of having to adjust yourself to a new culture, a new society, really made me think about how we can be molded.
Yeah. Not only that, though, I mean, he had to adjust to not only coming to America, but he had to adjust to coming to America and coming to Texas.
Right.
Which is like its own culture.
Right, right.
Country, yeah.
Especially how we talk. People be on me hard, like, where you from? Like, dang, do I sound that Southern? So today we're going to talk about multiculturalism, and Mr. Peak is here today and just give a little insight of some of his experiences and his thoughts and ideas when the word multiculturalism comes to light. So with that being said, when you hear the word multiculturalism, what is the first thing you think of?
You know, I think of it's a study of people and where they come from, their home life, their background, their communities that they grew up in. And people, I mean globally. Right. You know, in a nutshell, that's really what I would say if you wanted a short answer. But it obviously encompasses a pretty broad spectrum of, I guess, I don't know, what would be the word? It just covers a lot, you know, everything from music to clothing to speech to, let's just put all the senses in there. Okay, food, you know. So, I mean, you could go on and on and on. So I better just leave it a short answer.
Okay, and speaking of music, you are a musician, right?
Oh, man, you had to bring that up. Oh, you know, I have to tell you something. I'm really, before we get into this, because it's in the back of my mind, I just want to say how cool it is that y'all are doing this, because it does, you know, multiculturalism is the study of people.
Right.
Right? So this is what we're doing. This is like, we're diving right into the study of people, and you made a platform for it, and it's so cool. I hope we can keep it going, you know, year after year after year.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah.
They haven't kicked us out yet, so we must be doing.
So you asked me something. I already forgot it.
About to be a musician, man.
Oh, yeah. I thought I'd get away from it, I think. Well, you know, my background is, I guess, a little different. My mother's side of the family were all artists and musicians. On my father's side of the family, they were, I guess, you know, he was a basketball coach. They were into sports. But, you know, farming, you know, even that. So kind of working with your hands, physical labor would be a better way to put it. And that kind of stuck a little bit. I didn't realize that much that I had that music gene until I got into college, and I learned real quick that, you know, girls like music.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Sure
They're like
do.
musicians.
Yep.
My wife was
Yeah.
telling me I can't even learn how to play the piano again no more. You know, I wanted to learn how to play piano, and she was like, "No, nope, not gonna do it."
Man, that was the only reason why I played in college. Women like that, man.
Yeah,
That's
and
funny.
Doug is also an artist too, but you know, he's shy. I guess he don't want to tell us.
So, man, tell me about your background. Where you from? Like, how'd you get into?
Well, okay, we'll have to turn this around a little bit, go back a little further, because my life is weird. It is weird. So yeah, I'm an art major, and I was a scholarship athlete in basketball of all things. But that comes from growing up in a gym. My earliest memories were on a basketball court. Half the time we were the halftime show for my dad's team out in California, where my brother he would scoot, he would not crawl. He was older than me, so scooting takes longer. You don't go as fast scooting,
Right.
Right. So we would race. We'd have races at halftime. I'd crawl, he'd scoot, and I'm sure he probably won. He still rubs those kind of things in. But I grew up in California, Orange County area.
So you're a Lakers fan?
I've always liked the Lakers. Okay. Here's the thing. I said okay. I kind of like the teams like Seattle Supersonics, if you remember that.
Yeah. Sean
Sick-
Kemp.
DJ.
DJ.
Yeah, Sigma. Now DJ's from this area, right? No, he grew up in L.A. He's
Yeah.
Compton area. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. But yeah, I kind of liked. I guess we were kind of partial to them. My dad knew some of the coaches. He was offered a job with Supersonics, and he turned it down.
What?
Yeah, family man. He didn't want to be gone as much as he turned down a job at Rice when we were in Texas too. So,
Wow.
but for family reasons, he wanted to keep the family together and be around family. Which is interesting because my parents ended up getting a divorce.
Wow.
So you know how that works, right?
I guess you
I
took
bet
that
you,
job, didn't
hey, like, dang, I knew I should have went to work for the Supersonics.
Yeah, the story gets better, because they're both preachers' kids.
you? Wow.
Seriously,
Man.
yeah.
PKs.
Yeah, so maybe they're both a little rebellious. I don't know. But music. I don't know how many times you hear. If you watch like American Idol or any of these shows, people are going, "I grew up playing music in church." Seriously, because that is one of the key elements of the
Right.
church. And yeah, that's really probably where I got plugged in. We always had a piano in the house because Mom would play, and she played. She sang professionally for a while. She did a lot of commercials out in California. Some of the things you wouldn't even know it was her.
Wow.
She had this thing called perfect pitch, which I don't get. I don't have that. But she could look at notes on a paper and just, sing them
Damn.
perfectly on tune. So they'd have
Wow.
this script written up. She'd do stuff like for Pepsi and some other
Nice.
things. Hey, that's a plug, by the way.
Wow.
Pepsi.
Yeah.
So, we moved when I was 11, so I wasn't out there very long. But I grew up in a gym. We moved to Texas, Georgetown, and totally different experience.
What you mean?
Orange County to small town Texas, USA. I'm serious. It was, talk about culture shock. Not to mention the insects they had in Texas. I'd never seen a scorpion or
Right.
a centipede or anything like that. And I don't know if if you get down near the hill country in Austin, you get some crazy things crawling out around there. And all we ever saw were like maybe ants and a roach or two in California. It's kind of funny. I think when we moved out here, that's when everybody talked a little bit different. And I experienced culture
Right.
for the first time, which was kind of cool. I was learning a lot of things, and looking back on it now, the education I was getting wasn't always perfect. There's a lot of things that, what I mean by perfect wasn't always good. From this, when you're a kid, you don't realize what you're running into. And in California, we moved so much that I was always going to a different school. I think every year, back then coaches didn't get paid very much. I don't know if you know this. Yeah. I mean, he was at a small college, Southern California College. And I think you remember he was athletic director and head basketball coach and made $12,000 a year.
Oh, wow.
And this was a long time ago. But he had to take on another job during the summers. He was always doing something extra.
Right.
Well, what his other job was buying homes, fixing them up, and we would live in them. So that means a new school.
Mm-hmm.
So part of my upbringing, well, I guess, my home life was making new friends every year.
Wow.
Moving away, making new friends. Moving away, making new friends. And that's really, I remember it wasn't always easy. There were some difficult neighborhoods at times, but I learned real fast kind of how to fit in. And we moved to Texas. The reason I was mentioning that, when we moved to Texas, it was a lot more different.
Like what you mean? Like how?
Well, it was like everyone was the same. You know, whereas in California, you could find someone who maybe had an interest that was similar to yours, because it was like football, basketball was not important. Soccer, we were playing on cow fields. I'm not kidding you. And soccer was huge out in California. That was my favorite sport. You know, that's a culture shift for me. I was like, well, I guess I better start,
learning how to play some football
or something. and if you didn't fit in with it, you were an outcast.
Yep.
Yeah.
My first day of school, I wore Ocean Pacifics. You remember OPs?
Mm-hmm.
I wore corduroy shorts with flip-flops and a flowered OP shirt to small town Texas, USA. We didn't have air conditioning. We had the fans on the ceiling. And they said you cannot come back here again unless you have jeans on.
Wow.
Well, that first day, it was rough, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, I looked like the little surfer boy
Right.
in Texas, and they're wearing boots. They all wore boots, these Roper boots. I don't know what you call them now, but in blue jeans. And I was like, where did I go? What just happened? I actually got in a fight in the first day of school. I didn't start it. No, Frankie Condi started it, and it was like right out of a
You
movie.
hear that, Frankie?
Always Frankie, man.
Hit me on the back of the head with a pencil in class, and just kept doing it. And I just, kept doing it. And of course, all I did is get up and, back then, if a desk gets knocked over, you had a fight.
Right.
It wasn't really a fight. But the point is, it didn't fit in. And it was different because I knew that you also had to fit in with the right people there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was a learning experience. And I ended up fitting in, but it was also one of those things where it was probably more difficult. And that's a good question. Why? What made it different? You would think California would be more difficult. But I think out there was so much change that many of the other students were feeling the same way, whereas in small town, it was 3A school, I think, high school back then.
Everybody knows everybody.
Everyone knew anyone, and so you're the new kid in town. That
Yeah.
made it kind of tough.
Yeah, what was the, I'm pretty sure in Orange County, I mean, that's probably a really diverse area versus coming to, you said Georgetown, Texas?
Man, my best friend, I'm not kidding, these names are funny, but I had a Adam Remington, and he said he was Jewish, okay? Yeah. Adam Remington is my best friend in California growing up. And the other guy was Lucky, this is his name, Lucky Tennant.
Lucky
And he was Hispanic. And I didn't know, Tennant, I don't know, but he was Hispanic. And and he went by Lucky. And they lived on the same street. We played all the time. I didn't know anything better. I was babysat by players' wives on the team. Back then, Dad would recruit a lot of military athletes. And I think it was probably NAIA. The rules were different. Some of his players were older than him. He started his head coaching. He was 24 as a head coach, his first job. And some of his players were older than him. And I was baby, sat by so many different people. Lawrence McNeil, his girlfriend, Lawrence ended up doing some acting out in California. His I guess girlfriend back then would watch over us, and for me, growing up around different culture and especially how people look, I've never felt different about it. Yeah. My heroes in life growing up were athletes, and of course Michael Jordan was one of them. But I was a big Cowboys fan. Isn't that weird?
Wow.
Out in California.
Nah, because they got a lot of Cowboy fans. I will say that. I'm not particularly one.
Tony Dorsett. Yeah. Moose.
But that's why they so-called the America's team, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
They're not my team.
They need to get a little better. That's for sure. But yeah, it's kind of different. I don't know how we went there from music, but it was college when music and art came in. I'll finish it up if you want to know. I found out in high school I could draw well, and it ended up getting the award, and I was teased by the other athletes because it was like, oh, you could draw. And I remember thinking, why are they teasing me? It's cool. Look at this. It was cool. It was like it was a picture, but it was all done with dots, a face. And so when I was in college, I just happened to take a drawing class, and I drew this person with a stick of charcoal. And my teacher, her name was Star Varner, who ended up becoming a mentor for me, just amazing person, just kind of really took me in. It was the same time my parents divorced, freshman year of college. And she just kind of was like, you need to keep doing this. You've got something. And so I went from the basketball court to the fine arts building. I had zero life, and I played music at night in a band in Austin on 6th Street. I did that for about 5 years.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. Man, they got videos of you to prove it.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what's funny? They didn't video back then like they do now.
Yeah. I bet.
I'm sure somebody has something, but honestly, computers were just coming in for the first time.
Sure.
This was I graduated high school '87, so it was. I remember seeing the first Mac, Apple. They didn't even call it Mac then. It was Apple, right? They had the I think it looked like a rainbow and an apple that was bitten. So, anyways, they didn't have a lot of video. It's really interesting. My wife goes, sure. No, we had pictures, stuff like that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, as we continue to talk about multiculturalism, why do you think that multiculturalism is a topic that sometimes individuals don't want to talk about?
Well, I think there's a little fear in there for sure. That's probably, and it comes from not knowing for sure the answers. People don't like to be wrong, and so when they're around something they don't know, they realize they can be wrong. I'm reading a book on being wrong. It's pretty cool.
Really?
Yeah. I'll have to share it with you.
Yeah.
I want to read the book about being right.
But it's really interesting because it makes you think. I like to learn about people. I'm kind of passionate about it. I think everybody in education does. But you have to realize, especially in studying multiculturalism, that you're not right. There's no way you can know everything about everyone. You'd be God.
Right.
Hey,
right?
We've done this.
And
this is our 4th one.
Mm-hmm.
Heck, I've learned every time we've done it, and that's including the one we did on African Americans. And I was like, man, I didn't even know this.
Yeah. We got a buzz. Yeah. So if think about it, when people go and they sit down in certain areas, not because they don't like people, it's because they're in an environment where they feel like they're less apt to be uncomfortable. Well, what makes them feel uncomfortable? I don't know how. What? They'd always come out, I don't know. And, I don't know, meaning they don't know, meaning they don't have understanding, or they don't know why they feel that way. They don't know, maybe they're thinking about someone else. But the point is, people find comfort in things they do know.
Right.
And so, to me, I don't think people do that consciously. But like, if we were just at an event where celebrating strides, and I walked in and I saw Frankie, and Frankie works in my office, so I went and sat down by Frankie. Why? Well, there was a bunch of people I could have sat down, but I didn't know a lot of people other than her, so I sat by Frankie because I knew her. We could talk about it. She knows me. And so fear is probably one of those things that different types of fear. Do I want to offend? I want to be able to say the right things.
Right.
I want to know if it's a good time to shake someone's hand. If I cross my leg and show the bottom of my foot, is that okay? It's a number of things. Is it okay to belch after a meal? Is it that's part of some cultures, and now that was extreme, obviously, but the thoughts really come to mind. Just comfort. People like to be in the know, and fear keeps people from, really talking about culturalism.
I was listening to a video on YouTube, and I always look at stuff for like either my psychology class or just to be more informed. And I can't remember what the guy's name was, and he was basically saying it's amazing how you can get a group of strangers who don't know each other at a sporting event, and everybody's hugs and high fives, and everybody's comfortable, everybody's cool, but you can put them in a different setting, the same people, and they will avoid each other just simply based off of the differences of them not being aware of what is okay with the next person.
It's good.
And I was like, dang. I thought about the last Lakers game I went to when they played the Mavs, and I sat next to a guy, and we high-fived and had fun the entire game. And I have no idea who the guy is. But, I mean, and it made me think about, I was like, wow, it's amazing how you can come together for those type of events. But you can go, and I've been a victim of that too, going into a meeting or an event looking for someone like that I knew, and kind of more so gravitating to that person. So, yeah.
So how do you think we get around that? I mean, like, if people are fearful and they're scared to really, I guess, make a mistake or to be wrong, how do we encourage those conversations to happen?
Well, we tell our students in new student orientation, you're going to have to take some risks to learn, and you're going to have to make yourself uncomfortable. And I think that applies to this too. Yeah. It's no fun. People won't want to initially, but doing something, faculty and staff and administrators stretching themselves and doing something different, allowing for risk. I read this somewhere. I don't know who it was that said it, but fear kills creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And if we don't start allowing everyone to take some risks and to be wrong or fail or every now and then, how are we supposed to grow? And like you're saying with how do we get rid of that fear?
How do we get rid of that?
How are we supposed to grow if we don't allow people to, go into an area and be wrong, and then there be enough grace there to where the person that is wrong or is learning, wrong can be learning. How do we allow for that to happen? I think what we're doing right now is one of those things.
Yeah.
And that is, we have to create that environment where we can be transparent, where we can allow for that type of learning, the kind of learning that taught us to walk, So
where it's genuine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, actually Doug was the first person I met at TCC Southeast. He was on my hiring committee. And what's funny is Doug walked up to me and he was like, I bet you're Larry Jefferson. And it was like a vibe, and I'll tell him this now, it killed all nervousness that I had. I said, this guy's cool. Because we started talking about basketball stuff before we even walked into the interview. And I was cool. Okay, and he didn't have to do that. but it killed all of my nervousness. So thank you, Doug.
Hell, you're welcome. I felt the same way. It is interesting how, it's part of what we're trying to teach our students is when you go up and introduce yourself, you don't know that person.
Right.
But if you start sharing information and find something common, that can help. Maybe we have those sessions where we teach people how to have the type of conversation to be better listeners, but also to look for those things you can go, there's something I can relate to and talk about, rather than just to have my own agenda. And I don't know, it's like you're saying, it's good conversation to have, and it's good to make people aware that multiculturalism is worth talking about, and everything that surrounds it, why we don't talk about it more and why we don't explore it more. I think we're doing it right now.
Yeah. But I also have to say, man, that I appreciate you, one, coming on here, and also having the opportunity to do this. But, I think that being able to identify advocates, I think a lot of times when we're on in these type of situations and conversations, a lot of times we don't have the confidence or the level of comfortability to be able to go up to someone who doesn't look like them. And then when we do build those relationships, to identify that person as an advocate for them, you know what I mean? Like, to be able to say, okay, Doug's cool, he's not the typical white person that you normally hear about or see. Like, he's a strong advocate. You should go and meet him and do that. But we don't do that a lot of times for us or for our students,
Well, in my opinion, I think it's a lot of boxing people in, and we tend to stereotype and look at people and say, well, they this, they that. So, and I even found myself doing it today. A guy said something about the police, and I was like, oh, I don't want to hear nothing about them,
Right.
But I think, as we mentioned, fear does creep in when it comes to dealing with different people, but you have to be able to adjust and make those steps. Like I say, like Doug said, it kills creativity, and once you do that, how do you get back to it? So
I think also we're taught to excel all our lives, like in school, and you get graded on it.
Right.
And then, if you don't fit in, you think about the struggles you could have. You don't fit in with your surroundings, and you could be having grade problems. You could see how today our youth, that's who we were, and we grow up, and then we become adults, and we get jobs, and now we're supposed to try to help other people. So the one thing that's happening right now is we're exploring wellness. And one thing I do like about it is wellness goes hand in hand with self-awareness, where we learn about ourselves in order to have better conversations. It focuses on that well-being aspect. And I think that could, help some, because we all know the most difficult thing to deal with sometimes is trying to help people who don't want to be helped, or the main thing, like this book is saying, I'm not wrong. Right. This is who I am. I'm not changing. Whereas, because there's something wrong with being wrong, there's not. But that's the book's kind of funny because it makes us realize how hypocritical we can be and not even be aware of it.
Right.
Because we're education. We wouldn't even exist if people knew everything. Because people don't know everything and they could get things wrong, we have jobs.
Right.
So I think that if we explore that more, it's heading in the right direction. That because we have a job, because I'm a director, it doesn't mean I know everything. I don't. We need to be willing to say, I need to study students right now because I don't know enough. Who our students are changing. with technology and everything, we need to be asking questions and finding out, and that's really the interest. I don't know how. There's not going to be an easy way, because somehow we have to get past what we see on our own table and start looking at others, what they have on their table. And meaning, I believe, we grow up. You look at kids. We're selfish. We do that in part because we have to take care of ourselves.
Right.
I know I have little kids. Share your toys, Emily. No, I don't want to share. Natalie's not going to have any fun with Emily's toys. Why? Because Emily's selfish, and they have to learn how to not be selfish, and not look so inward, and get past later in life insecurities and all these things that can develop. So that only happens. That safe space is awesome. Safe space needs to be for everyone.
Yeah.
It needs to be one of those things where you could go, and we all need therapists.
So we basically asking people to take a risk.
Yeah. Take a risk, and also for those surrounding those people to be, cover it with grace and encouragement. That is so powerful today. Yeah, I guess it always has been. I don't want to make it sound like all of a sudden it's.
That's one of the things that we talk about with our mentors. People who work with our students, particularly students of colors, we tell them that students of color, they have a hard time building trust, period. And so when they see somebody who doesn't identify or look like them, that wall is even thicker. And so the more transparent, the more open, and the more honest you can be with the student, the quicker that relationship and that wall can kind of come down. But I think it's the same when we talk about with each other. When we're having these conversations, I'm not saying that, I need to tell y'all what I did back way back when I was 21 years old so that we can be comfortable. But I think trying to find that median ground, and then also to be open a little bit, and like you said, take risk, and know that yes, I may say something that may offend you, or I may say something that make you feel uncomfortable, and I apologize, but this is the way that I learn, and be okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been doing I've been doing a little, I don't know what you call it, private study, in asking students what gives them hope, and first define hope. Define hope. What gives them hope? What do they hope for? And I think up to 144 students have answered these, but it's the main thing about it you get from it is understanding who our students are.
Mm-hmm.
And we were reading through some of those today in student activities, me and my coordinator, and it was interesting because some students really opened up, wrote a lot, wrote about the country where they're from, and how people. One student was talking about 1,000 people in her village was because of the floods and rain or something that had happened, had passed away, and her parents are there and they can't always talk, and just all the things that people are going through. Another student mentioned he hopes to one day see his father. Just things that were like, whoa, you wouldn't expect. And you also had your hope for careers that some people don't feel like, or they've been told that they're not right for that career.
Right.
So those type of questions can appear a little bit risky, but we're asking our students to write goals. It's hard to write a goal if you don't have hope.
Yeah.
So, that kind of exploration, taking those types of risks, but maybe even, creating the type of learning environment where students and faculty and staff can sit down together outside of the classroom a little easier. That would be an idea. All those things that cost money, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, Doug, we want to thank you so much for joining us today. Very insightful.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the listeners will find your words pretty motivating in regards to being able to take that next step and step out of their comfort zone and not create so many in groups Yeah. So, as you know, Dr. Smith likes to end our sessions with a good quote. So, what you got for us today?
All right, so this is actually from a song from the Black Skylark, Z-Pad. And so it says, "There is a great new work before us, which is to replace with true knowledge the ignorance that has destroyed human minds. We will construct unity in a world which has been brutally torn apart by false divisions of race, religion, gender, nationality, and age. We will heal with unconditional love those souls whose hearts have been disfigured by hatred and loneliness."
Ooh, boy, you always deep.
Oh, man.
Well, thank you again for listening to the
I
Tarrant.
thought he was going to call for some offering after that.
Drop the mic, man. That's it. That's it. That's it. Boom.
Hey, I need a little bit of that offering
good.
too. We just bought my wife a new car, man, and she walking around this mother happy, and I'm like, ugh.
Don't even get me started. My wife trying to get me to get her one, man. I don't want that to rub off.
Yeah.
That was a good quote. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So, thank you for listening to the Tarrant County College Intercultural Network podcast, Making Sense of Diversity. Stay tuned for our next exciting episode.
Yeah, it's gonna be hot.
Who we have coming up next?
Next we have individual for Middle Eastern.
Middle Eastern, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah.
it's definitely gonna be different.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, signing off. Larry Jefferson.
Yeah, that's it.
Dantrell Smith.
Have
Take
a-
care.
All right.